I spent 6 years transforming a dark, possessive girl into a sweet, innocent angel. But I got so lost in her unreserved, passionate affection that I forgot to cure her of her hopeless romanticism. And now, every message from another man on her phone feels like a mockery of my 6 years of effort and of my foolishness for not curing her of that affliction. After finishing 10 packs of cigarettes by the floor-to-ceiling window, I let out one last, deep smoke ring and summoned the system. System, the main characters have reunited to rekindle their old flame. I'm requesting to exit this world. After confirming the date of my departure, I solemnly set a reminder in my phone's calendar. Just as I finished and was about to turn off my phone, a message from Chloe suddenly came through. Bring 2 packs of hangover medicine to the Onyx Club, room 808. I scoffed. Hangover medicine? Chloe couldn't even be bothered to come up with a better lie. I casually ordered 2 boxes on a delivery app, then turned off my phone and went to sleep. In the haze between sleep and wakefulness, a cold, electronic voice abruptly shattered the night's silence. System alert. Target's current affection level is 65%. I frowned and shot up in bed. Something was wrong. Why had the affection level gone up? I asked the system to double-check as I grabbed my phone and held down the power button. After the startup animation, countless missed calls and iMessage notifications flooded the screen. I opened my chat with Chloe. The screen was filled with her apologies, a mix of texts and long voice messages. For a moment, I couldn't tell what was more toxic, the chat log in front of me or the situation I was in. Honey, don't get the wrong idea. It was a party with friends tonight. Julian had too much to drink and grabbed the wrong phone. That's how he messaged you. You know how Julian is. So careless. Please don't be mad, okay? Honey, why was your phone off? I skimmed a few lines and couldn't bring myself to read the rest. It's true what they say. One lie requires 1,000 more to cover it up. A party with friends? Chloe must have forgotten she told me this afternoon that she had an international conference call tonight. Since I had already decided to leave, I didn't care what Chloe and Julian did. The only thing that mattered was that her affection level absolutely could not rise any higher. Host, all data appears normal. Analysis suggests your unusual behavior tonight triggered feelings of regret and hesitation in the target, causing the affection level to rebound. The system confirmed it several times, ultimately advising me to pretend I knew nothing. I was to play along with Chloe's infidelity and Julian's provocations to keep the level stable until I could exit the world in 7 days. Fine. I opened the chat and typed, I'm not mad. It was late. I just fell asleep. Don't work yourself too hard, and take care of yourself. Chloe never replied to those 2 messages. The clock already read 3 in the morning. I figured Chloe was probably in Julian's bed. Whether they were just sleeping in each other's arms or tangled in a passionate embrace, I couldn't know. When I woke up, the first thing I saw was Chloe. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, and the moment she saw I was awake, she moved in to embrace me. I subtly dodged her attempt to kiss me. Honey, it feels like I haven't seen you in ages. Did you miss me? Chloe murmured as she pressed herself against me. Her embrace was as full of affection as always. Still groggy from sleep, I instinctively hugged her back, resting my head on her shoulder. But that movement brought an ambiguous mark on the side of her neck directly into my line of sight. I was wide awake in an instant, but I acted as if I hadn't seen a thing. I asked Chloe, don't you have to work today? Chloe nuzzled against my chest, pressing herself even closer in a gesture that seemed to overflow with love. If it weren't for the system, I probably would have gone on believing I was deeply loved by her. I don't feel like working today. Go get ready, I brought breakfast. I want to spend the day with you. After I washed up and went downstairs, I saw that Chloe wasn't alone. It was Julian. The 2 of them were sitting intimately close on the sofa. I don't know what they were talking about, but Julian was smiling, his eyes crinkled, as he reached out to affectionately pinch Chloe's cheek and ruffle her hair. Chloe pouted in mock annoyance at her messy hair, which made Julian chuckle. He leaned in, whispering something to soothe her. His eyes were filled with a love I had once been lost in myself. It was only then that I finally understood. Chloe's captivating eyes looked at everyone with that same deep affection. But while affection can be faked, the system's data never lies. 2 months ago, Chloe claimed she was working overtime and, for the first time in 3 years, refused my offer to pick her up. She didn't come home that night, and it was on that very night that her affection level suddenly dropped from 100% to 90%. I was stunned the first time I saw her affection level was no longer maxed out. But there was no problem with the system, and the data wasn't wrong. Over the next 2 months, Chloe's affection level continued to plummet. I later found out that the night her affection level dropped was the very day Julian returned to the country. That day, Chloe said she was working late at the office, but she was actually at the airport picking him up. In fact, every time she had lied to me about overtime or work dinners recently, she had been with Julian. Julian, it was always Julian. Perhaps this was just the power of the story's leading man. I shook my head, pushing the thoughts away, and continued down the stairs. When she saw me, Chloe quickly stood up and said casually, "Julian just got back to the country, and it's not really safe for him to be staying alone. Is it okay if he stays with us for a while?" Julian wiped the smile from his face, called me Ethan, and stood obediently behind Chloe, waiting for my approval. He looked as if he wasn't the same person who had been sending me taunting messages every day. I found it laughable but kept my expression neutral. "Of course," I said, looking at them both. "I'll have someone get the guest room next to ours ready. He can stay there." Hearing this, Julian slung an arm over Chloe's shoulder, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. "Thanks, Ethan." His words were polite, but his eyes were full of hostility. I pretended not to notice and told Julian to make himself at home. The Miller family raised Chloe, after all. "Don't be a stranger," I said, handing Chloe the perfect excuse on a silver platter. The three of us sat at the dining table, the atmosphere both relaxed and bizarre. And just like that, breakfast was over. That evening, Julian volunteered to cook dinner. "If it weren't for Chloe and you, Ethan, I'd still be stuck in a hotel. Let me cook tonight's meal." Chloe watched Julian bustling in the kitchen, her emotions churning. She couldn't bear to imagine how much the young Miller heir, who had never lifted a finger in his life, must have suffered during his years abroad. And to think she had hated him, not knowing the truth, even wanting to cruelly retaliate against him. As if she couldn't bear it a moment longer, Chloe stood up, her eyes red, and walked step by step into the kitchen. I watched it all unfold from the sidelines, feeling no sadness, only a sense of relief and excitement. Just a moment ago, the system's alert had chimed again. "System alert, target's current affection level is 55%. The affection level had dropped. I could finally confirm the system's method was working. For the time remaining, all I had to do was play the part of the clueless fool, facilitating, or rather, pushing the two of them together, letting Chloe drift closer and closer to Julian. That way, her affection for me would continue to drop, and I wouldn't be tethered by it, allowing me to leave this world smoothly. 2 hours later, Julian began bringing dishes to the table. "Ethan, I made lemon-seared salmon, and this steamed sea bass is incredibly fresh. The main course is a seafood pasta with fresh herbs. I'm sure you'll love it." I looked at the seafood feast spread across the table and suddenly felt a wave of exhaustion. Chloe knew I was allergic to seafood. Whenever we ate out, she would meticulously instruct the chef not to use any seafood-based seasonings. Sometimes I thought she was being overly paranoid. "It's just a little seasoning, it'll be fine," I'd say. But she would just stare at me with wide, serious eyes, sigh, and say in a disapproving tone, "Have you already forgotten the last time you accidentally ate that caviar and broke out in hives all over?" I still remember the look of pure concern in her eyes when she said that. Yet today, after spending over 2 hours in the kitchen with Julian preparing a seafood feast, she hadn't noticed a single thing amiss. I took a bite of the seafood pasta and smiled at Julian. "This is delicious. Thank you. I'm glad you like it, Ethan. When I was abroad, I lived on bread. I craved seafood but could never afford it. Being able to cook all this for you and Chloe, I'm just happy. It's no trouble at all." His words pierced Chloe's heart. She looked at Julian's gaunt face, her own expression pained, and kept piling food onto his plate, completely oblivious to my discomfort beside her. I excused myself from the table early and went to the bathroom to splash cold water on my face. Thankfully, I hadn't eaten much. Just a few red welts were appearing on my arms and neck. Just as I was about to reach for my allergy medication, Chloe suddenly bolted past me, her face ashen, and ran for the bathroom. A sudden wave of nausea hit her, and she leaned over the sink, gagging uncontrollably. After a few minutes, the feeling finally passed. This felt completely different from the times she'd simply overeaten. Seeing her pale, trembling face, I asked the system, "Is she pregnant?" Her period was 2 weeks late. I had asked her about it, but she insisted it was just stress from work. I had once hoped Chloe and I would have a child. I was alone in this world, existing only for her. I was terrified of something changing. The system said that if I had a blood tie to this world, I could anchor myself here permanently. I was afraid of things changing, afraid I would change, afraid she would change. I had once genuinely hoped we could have a child, something to ground me in this world where I had no one but her. The emotions I had been suppressing all this time finally burst forth. I slowly helped Chloe to her feet, looked into her evasive eyes, and asked, word by word, "Chloe, tell me, are you pregnant?" Her face was pale. She glanced at Julian, who had just rushed in, and instinctively pulled away from me. She smoothed her damp hair and forced a casual smile. How could I be? I know my own body. I just ate too much, that's all. Then, she walked around my stunned form, took Julian by the arm, and left the bathroom. Oh, don't worry, it wasn't your food. I must have eaten something earlier. Now that my stomach's empty, I can really enjoy the meal you made. The sound of their laughter faded into the distance. I stood there in silence, staring at the floor, not moving for a long time. Finally, I covered my face and began to sob, my voice choked with grief. System, I think she's pregnant, but she doesn't want it. That's my child. What am I supposed to do? The two bright red lines on the pregnancy test shattered Chloe's last shred of denial. She stared at it, her face grim, and sat motionless in the office restroom for a long time. The next morning, she took a cab to the clinic and scheduled the procedure. The doctor reviewed her chart. You're pregnant, about 5 weeks along. Are you certain you don't want to keep it? Yes, I'm certain. When the system hesitantly told me Chloe had gone to the clinic, I debated for a long time before driving to our house, clinging to a sliver of hope. As soon as I got out of the car, I could hear Julian's laughter from the yard. In the garden, Julian was holding a Polaroid camera, snapping selfie after selfie with Chloe. Why aren't you smiling, Chloe? Congratulations on getting rid of that burden. Now you can finally live for yourself. Aren't you happy? Oh, this one's great, but your eyes are closed. I couldn't watch anymore and quietly went back inside. The photo wall in the living room was now covered with pictures of Julian and Chloe together. There were photos from their childhood, Chloe in a pretty princess dress with Julian standing behind her, a little boy puffing out his chest, trying to look like a valiant knight. The newest one was from just moments ago, taken in the greenhouse. They stood head to head, a sea of champagne roses behind them, looking for all the world like a wedding portrait. And all the photos of Chloe and me that used to be on that wall had been torn down and tossed carelessly onto a side table. A bitter feeling rose in my chest. My eyes drifted through the glass doors to the two of them in the garden. Suddenly, my eyes met Julian's. I saw it clearly. He gave me a victorious smirk, then leaned down and kissed the corner of Chloe's mouth. Chloe smiled, too, pulling him in to deepen the kiss. I looked away, my gaze falling on the discarded photos of Chloe and me. Some of them were already yellowed with age. I managed a bitter smile, telling myself it was for the best. She was starting her new life, so there was no point in me holding on to any illusions. Since I would be leaving soon anyway, it was time to throw these things out. Not just the photos, but her handwritten love letters, the anniversary gifts, the priceless art she'd bought for me at auction. I gathered every last one of them and tossed them into the storage room for now. I had just finished when the two of them came back inside from the garden. The moment Chloe saw me, she rushed over. Why do you look so pale? Her warm hand touched my forehead. When she didn't feel a fever, she seemed to relax. Why were you out so early? Where did you go? You didn't even take the driver and you weren't answering your phone. Did you eat? Is it low blood sugar? She pressed into my arms, firing off one question after another, acting genuinely concerned. I'm fine, but what about you? You look awfully pale. Chloe avoided my eyes and pulled away, mumbling, I'm fine. The sun was just a little bright outside. Before I could respond, she quickly changed the subject. Her answer didn't surprise me. I didn't press the issue, just glanced outside. Finished with your pictures? When I mentioned the photos, she answered without a hint of awkwardness. We're done. Julian wanted to take a lot to send to his parents so they can see. It was a noble-sounding excuse. Chloe was the daughter of the Miller's driver. After her own father died in a car crash when she was 9, the Millers took her in. She never forgot their kindness and had long considered them her own parents. I had nothing to say, but Julian took the opportunity to speak up. Ethan, I noticed a lot of your photos with Chloe were getting yellow, so I took them down. I was thinking I could help you two reorganize them. You're not mad, are you? Of course not. Julian smiled. So where are they? I remember leaving them on the table. I threw them out. Threw them out, Chloe demanded, her voice rising in disbelief, her expressive eyes wide. She grabbed my hands, forcing me to look at her. Honey, all those pictures of us, you threw them all away? Why? By the end of her question, there was an almost imperceptible catch in her voice. I didn't get it. She and Julian had done everything imaginable, and now she'd even brought him into our home. And despite all that, she was still going to put on this show of deep affection for me? Was 55% affection really that much love? For a second, I was tempted to call out her lies, but I remembered the system's warning and forced down the storm of emotions inside me. I didn't throw them out. They were a mess, so I took them to the study to sort through. The tension in her brow instantly eased. Don't ever say that again. You hear me, honey? Every moment I have with you is worth remembering. Those photos are more precious to me than my own life. Those once beautiful words now just made me feel sick. I had to bite my tongue just to keep from feeling nauseous. The next day, I watched the feed from the system. Chloe was lying calmly on the operating table. Her words echoed in my mind. Those photos were more precious than her life. So what about me? What about our unborn child? She used to track her cycle meticulously, trying to maximize our chances of conceiving. And every month, I would have a hot drink ready for her. And this month, when her period was 2 weeks late, we finally had a child. The old Chloe would have noticed immediately and told me with unrestrained joy. But now, she hid it from me, went to the clinic alone, and lay on that table by herself. And without the system, I would have known nothing about any of it. Chloe rested in the recovery room for 2 hours. Once the anesthesia wore off and her vitals were stable, she left the clinic. Back at the house, Julian was lounging on the sofa like he owned the place. With Chloe gone, he dropped his pathetic act. "Ethan, Chloe loves me. Don't you feel pathetic, still hanging around? You saw those messages I sent, right? We're incredible in bed, by the way. Is she ever that passionate with you?" I ignored him and headed straight upstairs. Being ignored only fueled his anger, and he followed me. He stood 2 steps above me, looking down. "What's with the silent treatment? Don't think you can solve anything by running away." I couldn't understand Chloe, and I couldn't understand Julian either. They loved each other. They should just be together. Since Julian had already won Chloe's heart, wouldn't it be easier for him to just have her ask for a divorce? If she asked for a divorce, would I really be able to fight it? At that thought, I said it out loud. "You can have Chloe divorce me. I won't object." I didn't expect my words to set him off. Julian gritted his teeth. "Ethan, if you had any sense, you'd be the one to leave." The moment he finished speaking, he kicked me with all his strength, sending me tumbling down the stairs. As I prepared to exit, my physical body in this world had grown weaker. After tumbling down the stairs, every inch of me ached. "Julian, are you insane? Aren't you afraid Chloe will find out?" He stood on the stairs, smirking at my pained state. "You don't actually think she'd choose you over me, do you?" With that, he walked down, lay on the floor next to me, and called Chloe. "Chloe, help me." I watched the whole thing unfold, struggling to get to my feet. If Chloe came back now, she'd realize something was wrong with my physical condition. Would the affection level, which had already fallen, start to rise again? I couldn't risk anything affecting that number, whether her concern was real or fake. I couldn't take that chance. But I was just too weak. Chloe rushed in, saw both of us on the floor, and ran straight to Julian. "Julian, are you okay? Are you bleeding? Don't worry, I'll take you to the hospital right now." She frantically helped Julian up and had already taken several steps before she even seemed to notice I was also on the floor. She frowned at me, her voice cold. "Ethan, only immature men play these kinds of games. I'm not going to deal with you right now. Julian has a clotting disorder. I'm taking him to the hospital first. I'll deal with you when I get back." Lying on the floor, I felt my body temperature plummeting, as if all the blood was draining from my body. I must have blacked out for a moment. When I came to, I had just enough strength to struggle into a sitting position, realizing it hadn't been a dream. The blood flowing from the back of my head had soaked the collar of my shirt. Chloe never came back. Not wanting to disturb anyone else, I shakily called a car and managed to get myself to the hospital. "My goodness, what a fall. The bleeding has stopped, and thankfully you didn't hit any critical spots. We'll keep you for observation overnight to monitor your recovery." It was the doctor who had treated me. Seeing I was alone, he couldn't help but ask, "Where's your wife? Your records say you're married. With an injury like this, isn't she coming to look after you?" I must have looked pathetic, because even this doctor I just met was looking at me with pity. With just the 2 of us in the room, I didn't have to worry about that damned affection level, so I spoke freely. "She's dead." Rushed off to see her lover, drove too fast, and crashed. As I said it, a weight lifted off my shoulders, and for the first time in a long time, I genuinely smiled. The doctor's expression, however, grew even more pained. He looked like he wanted to offer some comfort but was at a complete loss for words. The next day, I saw Chloe and Julian at the hospital entrance. Julian had a woman's black coat draped over his shoulders as Chloe held him close, carefully helping him into the back seat of a car. As the car started to pull away, the driver spotted me and asked Chloe if he should stop. Before Chloe could answer, Julian clutched his shoulder and cried out in pain. "Drive." "Yes, Ms. Anderson." The accelerator was pressed, and the Rolls-Royce sped past me without a moment's hesitation. Inside the car, Julian's eyes were brimming with tears, yet he was still defending me. "Chloe, I'm sure Ethan didn't mean it. Please don't be angry with him. My birthday is the day after tomorrow. We should invite him to come. Chloe looked deeply at Julian, wondering how a person's heart could be so fickle. Ethan was always so kind and gentle. How could he have been so cruel as to push Julian down the stairs? Julian had a clotting disorder. He couldn't risk any injury that might cause bleeding. An act like that was practically a death sentence. And yet here was Julian, still foolishly defending him. Chloe shook her head, and after a long pause, she sighed and agreed. At that exact moment, the system's alert sounded once more. System alert, target's current affection level is 50%. I stood at the hospital entrance, the winter wind cutting through me, chilling me to the bone. But I couldn't tell if it was the wind or my heart that was colder. In just 2 months, her affection level had been cut in half. Could you even call 50% affection love? Isn't love supposed to be absolute? I silently posed these 2 questions that had been troubling me to the system. But obviously, the system couldn't comprehend such complex emotional matters. Host, I do not understand. I gave a bitter laugh and let it go. My departure was in 3 days. I figured it was time to say goodbye to the one friend I had in this world. In this world, my entire existence revolved around Chloe, so in all these years, I had only made one true friend, Mark Davis. When Mark heard I was moving abroad, he was stunned into silence for a long time. Why so sudden? You never mentioned anything about this before. I couldn't tell him about the mission or the system, so I gave him a half-truth. Julian's back. I'm done revolving my life around Chloe. When I got home, Chloe was applying ointment to Julian's injury, but their posture was far from innocent. They were inches away from kissing. I took one look, turned, and headed upstairs, but Chloe called out to stop me. Ethan, just because Julian isn't holding a grudge about you, pushing him down the stairs doesn't mean you don't owe him an apology. I turned back to see the triumphant look in Julian's eyes and the barely concealed anger on Chloe's face. For a moment, I was speechless. Julian, are you saying I pushed you? Julian didn't answer, merely tugging on Chloe's sleeve. Chloe, it's over. Let's just drop it. Chloe took his hand in hers, her anger flaring. Ethan, fine, I'll apologize. I bowed low. I'm sorry. It was my wicked, petty nature that made me do something as despicable as pushing him down the stairs. Julian looked furious, but with Chloe there, he just clenched his fists and said nothing. Can I go now? I asked, looking at Chloe calmly. For some reason, a flicker of panic crossed Chloe's face, and she softened her tone. Ethan, Julian is still young. He went through a lot while he was away. Just be a little nicer to him. Okay, don't be so hard on him. He really does see you as a brother. With his parents gone, now that he's back, the 3 of us are a family. Okay, my reply was curt. In my mind, I was thinking, what future? Chloe seemed at a loss for words. It felt like ever since Julian came back, I'd been nothing but difficult, especially the last few days. She decided to give me the cold shoulder and said no more, but as I turned to leave, she asked one last thing. I saw Mark's Facebook post. He said something about it being the last time he'd see you, that he'd miss you. What was that about? Hearing her mention it, my hand at my side clenched for a second before I forced it to relax. I looked at her, my gaze clear and steady. Mark is moving abroad next month. We probably won't see each other for a long time. Chloe let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Julian's birthday party is the day after tomorrow. You can invite him if you want. We'll see. Chloe didn't come back to our bedroom that night. I was getting used to it. I could sleep just fine without her there. But tonight, the moon was so bright it woke me, and I couldn't get back to sleep. So, under the cover of darkness, I dragged that large box from the storage room out to the garden and set it all on fire. The yellowed photos curled and blackened as the flames consumed them, quickly turning to ash. The fire wasn't hot enough to completely destroy the other gifts, the jewelry and valuables melting into a blackened, misshapen lump. 2 of the housekeepers from the guest house saw the flames and came running over. Sir, is everything all right? As the last ember died out, all evidence of our love was gone. I dusted off my hands. It's nothing, just burning some trash. Bury the remains in the garden somewhere. Yes, sir. Feeling a sense of release, I walked back toward the house. But the moon was so bright tonight that when I glanced up, I could clearly see 2 figures entwined before the 3rd-floor window. In the blink of an eye, it was the day of Julian's birthday. Chloe had planned the party herself, creatively choosing a yacht as the venue. 3 yachts sailed in formation, heading out into international waters. Before nightfall, the ballroom on the main yacht was already alive with music and laughter. At the center of it all, Chloe was on Julian's arm, the 2 of them dancing to the elegant music. Everyone was smiling and happy. I was happy too, because after today, I would finally be free of this world. During a lull in the dancing, Julian approached me, a drink in his hand. Ethan, I'm so glad you could make it. Have a drink? It's a virgin mojito, so it's fine even with your stitches. I wasn't surprised he knew. After pushing me, he would have certainly checked the hospital records. I took the glass calmly. Thank you. When he saw me drink it, he couldn't hide the excitement on his face. Julian led me to a secluded terrace, away from any security cameras. Ethan, you still don't know that Chloe got rid of your baby, do you? And what do you think she'd say if she knew you got into a fight over some other woman? But my injury was from you kicking me, wasn't it? That's a lie. Julian's voice rose. The force I used couldn't have caused that kind of injury. You were already hurt when I kicked you. So you admit you kicked me? He'd walked right into my trap. He clenched his fists in anger. Since we were alone, he dropped the pretense. So what if I did? I held up my phone with a smirk. Not much, except I recorded it. Furious, he snatched the phone from my hand and hurled it into the ocean. But my smile only widened. Just kidding. I didn't record anything. Before he could relax, I added, but there are cameras in the living room at the house. I hadn't even finished speaking when a wave of dizziness washed over me. My legs felt weak, and my vision started to blur. Seeing my state, the tension in Julian's face vanished. Go on, keep smiling. You were going to say there's a recording? I had it deleted ages ago. Did you really think I'd leave any evidence behind? I gripped the railing to stay upright and stammered through gritted teeth. Julian, what was in that drink? Just a little something to help you have a good time. The only reason Chloe won't divorce you is because she's bothered by the fact I lived with someone else abroad. Well, once you're just as tainted, she'll have no problem being with me. I never imagined Julian would do something like this in front of everyone. In the distance, a strange man was already walking toward us, getting closer with every step. My head grew heavy. I bit my tongue hard, trying to stay conscious. A trickle of blood ran from the corner of my mouth. The pain cleared my head for only a second before Julian grabbed my chin and shoved me toward the stranger. The blood in my mouth spilled out, and I was a complete mess. But that wasn't enough for him. He lifted his foot and kicked me hard in the chest. His custom alligator skin shoes felt like a blade. Once he'd had his fill, he squatted down and said, his voice dripping with malice, "Enjoy your night, Ethan, and don't expect Chloe to come looking for you. She's waiting for me. We'll be together all night. I'll keep her company, so you don't have to worry." Powerless, I was dragged away to an unfamiliar room. Along the way, the man's greasy, disgusting hands kept roaming over my body. By the time we reached the room, my clothes were in disarray. The moment he pushed the door open, he pushed me against it and kissed me. It was a brutal, bloody kiss. The overwhelming force and the pain actually cleared my head a little. I was only one day away from returning to my own world. I couldn't just give up. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a glass vase on the nightstand. I stopped struggling. "Let's go to the bed," I suggested. He let out a lewd chuckle. "Knew a woman couldn't satisfy you." With that, he dragged me over to the bed. With a crash, I seized my chance, grabbed the vase, and smashed it over the back of his head. Glass shattered everywhere. Blood and water streamed down his head, creating an instant, chaotic mess. My hands were trembling, my heart was pounding, and my thoughts were racing. But before I could even feel a moment of relief, the man on the floor started to get up. "You little punk, you dare hit me." He lunged at me, screaming. In a panic, I raised the jagged base of the vase and struck out, hitting and stabbing wildly. I don't know how much time passed before the world fell silent. When I opened my eyes, he was lying at my feet, his features a bloody mess, his body twitching. I stumbled to the door, only to find it locked from the outside. I didn't have to guess to know it was Julian's handiwork. I could only back away, watching the man squirming on the floor, feeling sick to my stomach. I couldn't stand being in the same room with him, so I retreated to the terrace and locked the door behind me. Once I was sure he couldn't get in, I finally allowed myself to curl up in a corner. The sky was pitch black now. Out on the open sea, the wind howled, and the air was thick with the salty spray. I stared into the oppressive darkness, feeling like I was about to be swallowed by it. I was on the verge of breaking down when the system's alert suddenly sounded. "System alert. Target's current affection level is 25%. I no longer had the energy to wonder why the affection level had dropped so drastically. I just waited for the dawn. I had confirmed it with the system. At dawn, I could finally leave this world. Meanwhile, before going to find Chloe, Julian had also had a drink that was spiked. Now, the two of them were tangled together in bed. Chloe looked at Julian, lost in a daze of passion, and felt a sense of relief that she was the one he was with. Their night of passion lasted until the first light of dawn. And on the terrace, I watched the red glow on the horizon grow brighter, my heart pounding with anticipation. The sun rose, a brilliant red orb, I stood up and leaped from the terrace into the endless sea below. As I hit the water, I gave my final, firm command. System, exit world. Affirmative, host. A soft light enveloped me, and in an instant, I vanished without a trace. Even the ripples from my entry into the water slowly faded, returning the surface to calm. Help! Someone's in the water. Somebody help! A few young people who were on deck to watch the sunrise saw it happen. They stood there, mouths agape, completely stunned, before frantically shouting for help. The tranquil morning was shattered. The yacht's crew sprang into action, confirming the location with the witnesses before launching a rapid rescue operation. The witnesses stood on the deck, pointing out the spot to the rescue team. Yes, right there. I saw it. That's the spot. A crowd began to gather on deck as wave after wave of divers went into the water, expanding the search radius with each attempt. The more time passed, the slimmer the chances of survival became. Their supervisor had repeatedly warned them that the guests on these yachts were all incredibly wealthy and influential. They couldn't afford a single mistake and had to be on their absolute best behavior. They had responded immediately, but there was simply no one in the water. They began to wonder if anyone had fallen in at all, or if this was just some cruel prank by the wealthy guests. But they kept such thoughts to themselves, never pausing the search for a second. Meanwhile, on deck, the young witnesses had started to argue. Did you actually see someone fall in or not? Of course I did. It was right there. You said you saw it too. I didn't see anything. I just heard the splash. But wouldn't they have yelled for help? Or at least struggled, even if they couldn't swim? That's true. Are you sure you saw someone? You weren't just seeing things. Still half asleep. What? No, I don't think so. As they talked, they began to doubt themselves. The clock ticked on. Half an hour passed in the blink of an eye. On the deck and on the rescue boats, the atmosphere grew heavy. Everyone knew that if someone had really gone overboard, after this long, there was no chance of survival. Anxiously, the crew pulled up the security footage from the deck cameras. See, I told you I wasn't wrong. The video clearly showed the fall. No one doubted it anymore. Some watched the sea, waiting for news, while others replayed the video, trying to get a clear look at the person who had jumped. But the tense atmosphere on deck hadn't reached Chloe and Julian. In their room, Chloe lay in Julian's arms. Julian? She asked with concern. Are you still feeling sick? Julian didn't answer, just pressed his face into her hair. After a long moment, he murmured, Not at all. I feel great. Chloe looked up at him. She remembered a moment last night when, in a daze, Julian had mumbled that he only felt that way because of a drink Ethan had given him. A shadow crossed her eyes. Ethan had been so antagonistic toward Julian lately. Julian had been gracious enough to let the staircase incident go with a simple apology. And now Ethan had escalated things, drugging him like this. When had Ethan become so malicious? She placed a series of gentle kisses on Julian's lips, but her words were firm. I can't believe Ethan would do something like this to you. Don't worry. I'll make sure he answers for it. Julian looked up, his eyes welling with tears. Chloe, I'm so scared. Yesterday he told me to stay away from you or he'd kill me. Chloe, can't you just divorce him? If my parents knew you were with a man like that, they would never be able to rest in peace. He knew the debt she felt to his parents, and he was deliberately using them to pressure her. But at his words, Chloe's gaze faltered. Divorce is a serious thing. Don't worry, he won't dare do anything while I'm here. Julian, I won't let you get hurt. Chloe quickly got up to get dressed. She didn't know why, but when Julian mentioned divorce, she had felt a sudden pang of panic. Divorce? Impossible. She would never divorce Ethan. But what about Julian? She thought she loved Ethan with her whole heart, but since Julian's return, she realized she had never truly forgotten him. It was only now that she was beginning to realize she might be in love with two men. Lost in her own turmoil, she completely missed the venomous look in Julian's eyes. Julian's eyes burned with fury, his fists clenched, but he quickly forced himself to relax. Even if Chloe still had feelings for Ethan now, that would change soon. When she saw Ethan in another man's bed, he was certain she would finally divorce him. The two of them soon arrived outside my door. Chloe frowned and knocked twice. There was no answer. Her patience worn thin, she called for a security guard and had him kick the door in. But inside, there was no sign of me. The bed was perfectly made, everything in its place. It was as if I had never been there at all. Seeing the empty room, Chloe's anger flared. He'd done something wrong and now he was hiding like a coward. But where could he possibly hide on a yacht? Chloe pointed to a few of her staff. You go find him. If you have to, search every single room. The men quickly dispersed. She wearily rubbed her temples and headed for the main deck, already planning how she would teach me a lesson once she found me. But before she could decide, a group of people ran up to her. "Ms. Anderson, we finally found you. There's been an accident. Someone went overboard." "No, they didn't fall, they jumped. It was a suicide." Chloe's expression turned grim. She had personally organized this party, filled with important guests. How could something like this have happened? In a few hurried sentences, they explained what had happened on the deck that morning. It was still dark, and it happened so fast, the video isn't clear. The rescue team is searching, but it's been over half an hour. The man checked his watch. "Actually, it's been almost an hour now. The chances are not good." Chloe was self-made, having fought her way to the top. She was far more composed in a crisis than these trust fund kids. "I'll contact a professional recovery team. You, take some men to the security room and identify who it was." The recovery team would take at least 3 hours to arrive. Everyone knew they would be recovering a body, not a survivor. But they needed confirmation, a body. No matter who it was, Chloe couldn't just leave them lost at sea. Chloe went out on deck and watched as the yacht's own rescue divers searched again and again, returning empty-handed each time. The murmurs of the people around her filled the air. Such a great party, completely ruined by this. I wonder who it was. It can't be one of the guests, or their family would be making a scene by now. We wouldn't need to check the cameras. Probably one of the crew members. The wind howled, and a roaring sound filled Chloe's ears. A powerful sense of dread washed over her. Her phone rang. For some reason, she found herself afraid to answer it. Just before the call disconnected, she finally pressed the answer button. About the person who went overboard. The hesitation in the voice on the other end made her anxiety spike. Her free hand clenched into a fist, nails digging into her palm. She asked, her voice hoarse, "Who was it?" She didn't even realize her own voice was shaking. The person on the other end didn't answer directly. "You should come see for yourself." Chloe glanced around aimlessly, not sure who or what she was looking for, before turning to leave. She hadn't gone far when the men she'd sent to find me came running up. "Where's Ethan?" she asked, her voice sharp with urgency. The men shook their heads, dejected. "We've searched every room. He's not there." Although, there was one room. Hearing that they couldn't find him, her panic intensified. The impossible thought she'd been suppressing suddenly roared to life. Could the person who went overboard have been Ethan? She asked herself the question, then immediately dismissed it. No, he must feel guilty and is hiding somewhere, too scared to face her. That had to be it. Chloe didn't want to hear any excuses. She cut them off. Then search again. Don't miss a single corner. The men scattered again, and Chloe walked briskly toward the security room. On the way, she thought that if he was this scared, then perhaps she could let it slide as long as Julian was okay with it. After all, Julian hadn't been seriously harmed. As she considered this, a small smile even touched her lips, as if she'd found the perfect way to balance the two men in her life. But when she reached the security room and saw the hesitant, pained expressions on everyone's faces, her smile froze. "The person who went overboard, I think it was your husband." Chloe stared in disbelief, stumbling backward. The words hit her like a physical blow. She felt as if she couldn't breathe. She trembled and screamed, "Impossible!" She shoved past the others and lunged toward the monitor. On the grainy, zoomed-in footage, the curled-up figure of a man was barely visible in the corner of a terrace. Then, as the sun rose, the figure stood up and, without a moment's hesitation, jumped. The video was even blurrier than the first one. Chloe gritted her teeth, her furious gaze sweeping over the room. "You're telling me that's my husband based on this blurry piece of crap? Why don't you say it's one of your husbands? Huh? Answer me." Chloe was always so composed and elegant, always polite. They had never seen her lose her temper like this. One of the technicians cautiously stepped forward and pulled up a different video file. "Ms. Anderson, maybe you should look at this." It was footage from a hallway camera. In the video, Ethan was clearly visible, dazed and unsteady on his feet, being led by another man toward the room at the very end of the hall. All the while, the man's greasy hands were all over him. Chloe watched the footage of Ethan's helpless struggles, the tears streaming down his face, and her own eyes turned bloodshot with rage. But the issue was no longer about the assault. The technician carefully pointed out the crucial fact. They went into room 309, the terrace in the other video. That's the terrace for room 309. She refused to believe it. He was just hiding, too scared to face her. She grabbed the technician by the collar, screaming at the top of her lungs, "Impossible! I said it's impossible." With that, she shoved him away and ran for room 309. Room 309 at the end of the hall was in complete disarray. Shards of glass and dried blood covered the floor, where a man lay, barely breathing. The people who had followed her gasped at the sight. Hearing footsteps, the man thought he was being rescued and cried out weakly, "Help me!" Chloe stared at the man crawling toward her, the images from the security footage flashing in her mind. Taking advantage of Ethan when he was helpless? With those filthy hands? He deserved to die. Chloe strode forward and brought her heel down hard on the man's right hand. She put her full weight on it, grinding it into the floor, the sharp point of her heel piercing straight through his palm. The man screamed in agony, cold sweat pouring down his face. He couldn't pull his hand free, and his obese body thrashed on the floor, his arm twisting at an unnatural angle. Talk. Where is Ethan? I'm asking you, where the hell is Ethan? Ah, he's on the terrace. I didn't do anything, I swear. Please. She lifted her foot, but before the man could even register a moment of relief, she kicked him hard in the ribs. Chloe pushed open the terrace door. She stood at the threshold, her feet feeling as if they were filled with lead, unable to take another step. Just a moment ago, she had clung to one last fantasy, that he was just hiding in a corner, waiting for her to find him. But the terrace was empty. There was no sign of him. Chloe's hands began to shake. A current of pure agony shot through her body, and her heart felt like it was splitting in two. The thread of unease that had been growing since last night finally snapped. It was only now, finally, that Chloe was forced to accept the truth. Ethan was dead. He had jumped and he was dead. Unable to bear it any longer, her legs gave out and she collapsed to her knees. Before her was the vast, endless ocean, an expanse that embraced all and consumed all. She couldn't bear to think that if only she had paid him a little more attention last night, none of this would have happened. Overwhelmed with a regret she couldn't contain, Chloe, her eyes bloodshot, ran back inside, hauled the man up by his collar, and punched him. The man was barely breathing, limp and silent in her grasp like a side of meat. The others rushed to pull her off. Ms. Anderson, stop. You'll kill him. In her rage, she threw them aside. She was seeing red, completely lost to reason. She truly wanted him dead. Seeing this, Julian rushed in and wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hands resting on her waist. Chloe, stop. I'm getting worried. His voice trembled, but inside he was ecstatic. He had only intended to use this incident to force a divorce. Who could have guessed Ethan would be so fragile as to actually kill himself? It was perfect, but his perfect fantasy was quickly shattered. It seemed he no longer held any special place in her heart. With a single hand, Chloe threw him to the floor. Get out, all of you. Julian lay on the floor, staring in disbelief. He had never seen this side of Chloe before. Was Ethan really that important to her? But no matter how important he was still dead. And what good is a dead man against a living one? Julian quickly reassured himself. But he had barely had a moment to relax when the men Chloe had sent to find Ethan came rushing back, their words making his heart stop. Ms. Anderson, the dive team found a phone. We think it's his. Chloe finally looked up from her rage, her eyes so bloodshot they looked like they might bleed. The men lowered their heads, unable to meet her gaze. But, please accept our condolences. Although his body hadn't been found, everyone knew that after hours in the water, there was no hope. Chloe slowly rose to her feet, a cold sneer on her face, her eyes glinting with a sharp, cold light. Condolences? What for? Who said Ethan is dead? Based on what? A phone? She wasn't shouting, but her low, intense questioning was even more terrifying. The man at the front answered nervously, Ms. Anderson, the phone case. What about it? It's a common case. How can you say it's his? Is this how you conduct a search? The security footage, the eyewitnesses on deck, the phone recovered from the ocean. Piece by piece, the evidence piled up, all of it screaming the same thing. Ethan had jumped. Ethan was dead. But Chloe, who was always so sharp and decisive in business, seemed to have lost all capacity for reason. She had built a fortress around her heart, trying to block out the truth that everyone else could see. A few of her friends couldn't stand it anymore and tried to reason with her. Chloe, you need to calm down. We know you're devastated that he's gone, but deceiving yourself like this won't help. She's right, Chloe. He's gone. Please, you have to accept it. Chloe's gaze slowly swept over the people who had spoken. She said nothing, but the warning in her eyes was unmistakable. They fell silent, but Julian ignored the tension and rushed to her side, throwing his arms around her. Chloe, they're right. Ethan is gone, but the living have to keep living. You still have me, Chloe. I'll always be here for you. Chloe stood motionless, her mind uncontrollably flashing back to the night before. Last night, while she was wrapped in another man's arms, lost in a night of passion. Ethan had been trapped, struggling, hopeless. Suddenly, the man in her arms no longer felt comforting, but like a monster. She pushed him away, sending him stumbling to the floor again. Rejected twice in a row, Julian, hurt and angry, simply sat on the floor and bowed his head, playing the victim to garner sympathy. As more people gathered, A few of Julian's friends, unable to watch any longer, spoke up. I mean, Ethan's dead. What's with this whole tragic love performance? Ms. Anderson, a performance? Chloe repeated, her eyes narrowing in disbelief. What? Am I wrong? You've been with Julian this whole time. Now that Ethan's dead, doesn't that just free up a spot for him? Yeah, at the last party you said it yourself that Julian was the most important man in your life. So isn't Ethan's death convenient? Who is this drama for? The cruel words hit her one by one. She wanted to deny them, but she couldn't. Everything they said was true. Unable to argue, she collapsed to the floor, her shoulders slumped, curling into a miserable ball. And now, finally, the tears came. She covered her face with her hands and broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. She had promised to love him, only him, forever. But in just a few short years, she had neglected him again and again for Julian. She thought she could balance them both, but she had failed completely. And now, for the sake of Julian's birthday, Ethan had lost his life. She had killed him. Chloe gave a bitter smile, as if she was finally accepting his death. Give me my husband's phone. The words were barely out of her mouth when Julian shot to his feet, reaching out to stop them. No! All eyes in the room turned to Julian. He was so nervous his hands were shaking, but he clutched the phone tightly. He remembered what Ethan had said on the terrace last night about recording their conversation. He didn't know if it was true, but he couldn't take the risk. He had worked so hard to get to this point. Now that Ethan was dead, he could finally marry Chloe. If that recording exposed everything, it would all be for nothing. The thought solidified his resolve, and he hid the phone behind his back. Chloe, this is one of Ethan's last possessions. When we get back, let's go through his things together and give him a proper farewell. Okay? Give it to me. Looking at it now will only cause more pain. The priority is to recover his body. Julian thought his reasoning was sound, but Chloe wasn't listening. Give it to me. Don't make me ask a third time. Julian didn't dare argue further. He shuffled forward, phone in hand. With each small step, he repeatedly pressed the power button. He prayed the water damage was too severe for it to ever turn on again. But at the exact moment he handed it to Chloe, the screen flickered to life. Julian panicked and lunged for it, but he was too late. Chloe took the phone and silently removed the case. When she saw the photo tucked inside, a picture of the two of them, she froze. Then, as if a dam had broken, she began to sob, her whole body shaking. The water had faded and blurred the image, but the smiling faces in the photo were etched forever in her memory. It was the photo from their marriage license. He had liked it so much he'd had 2 extra copies printed. She kept her copy in her wallet and would proudly show it to people, introducing him as her husband. And he had kept his in his phone case. The more she remembered the past, the more unbearable the present became. Why had she? Her vision blurred by tears, Chloe turned on the phone, desperate to see if he had left any message for her. The screen was water-damaged and unresponsive. Most of the apps wouldn't open. She tried them one by one until finally, the voice recorder app opened, and she was met with the sound of Julian's voice. Ethan, you still don't know that Chloe got rid of your baby, do you? And what do you think she'd say if she knew you got into a fight over some other woman? The force I used couldn't have caused that kind of injury. You were already hurt when I kicked you. Go on, keep smiling, Ethan. You were going to say there's a recording? I had it deleted ages ago. Did you really think I'd leave any evidence behind? Just a little something to help you have a good time. The only reason Chloe won't divorce you is because she's bothered by the fact I lived with someone else abroad. Well, once you're just as tainted, she'll have no problem being with me. Enjoy your night. When the recording finished, the chaotic room was deathly silent. Chloe stared at Julian in utter disbelief. The recording looped, and Julian's voice filled the silence once more. You still don't know that Chloe got rid of your baby, do you? She couldn't believe it. The voice on the recording sounded like a stranger. So Ethan had known. He had known what she was hiding, and it was Julian who had kicked him down the stairs, then turned around and framed him for it. And everything that had happened to Ethan last night, it was all Julian's doing. Chloe beat her fists against her head, unable to imagine the torment Ethan must have endured. He had been suffering so much at Julian's hands, and he had never said a single word to her. It shouldn't have been like this. She had failed him. She was a monster. If Julian was the killer, then she was his accomplice. At this thought, her sharp gaze fell on Julian. Julian's face was ashen, his lips trembling. Chloe, listen to me. It's not what you think. Julian, you can jump off this boat and atone to Ethan. Her voice was as cold and merciless as a demon's. At her words, a look of terror crossed not only Julian's face, but everyone else's as well. They had all just witnessed how brutally she had dealt with Ethan's attacker. If they hadn't intervened, she would have killed him. And now she was telling Julian to join him. It was not an empty threat. Julian's knees buckled, and he fell to the floor, sobbing. Chloe, you can't do this to me. I know you're hurting because Ethan's dead, but I never wanted this to happen. I just wanted him to leave so we could be together. I just love you so much. Chloe, is it a crime to love someone? He cried pathetically, professing his love for her. I know I made a mistake, but we're childhood sweethearts. We were supposed to be together. Why did you have to fall for some guy who just appeared out of nowhere? You said you'd wait for me, that you'd always love me. Have you forgotten? Let's just pretend Ethan never existed. We can start over just like before, okay? He knelt on the floor, pleading desperately. Many of the onlookers were moved by his words, their expressions softening from contempt to pity. After all, every family had its own drama. These kids had grown up watching their own mothers deal with their father's affairs. Julian's actions, in comparison, seemed almost tame. If anything, it just proved how weak and pathetic Ethan was, to be taken down by a single drug drink. One of them, feeling sorry for him, spoke up. Ms. Anderson, he's not entirely wrong. Shut up. Chloe had no patience for it. Julian, don't ever let me see you again. And don't think for a second I won't find out if you're hiding anything else from me. Julian shook his head, tears streaming down his face. No, please no. Chloe, I'm begging you. For my parents' sake, please forgive me just this once. I love you, Chloe. I can't live without you. Chloe looked at him, her eyes completely empty of any warmth or affection. If it weren't for the memory of my parents, do you think you would still be alive right now? Julian still wasn't ready to give up, but a few of the more sensible guests dragged him away before he could say more. If he kept pushing, there was no telling if Chloe, in her current state, would forget the debt she owed his family and actually throw him overboard. The room slowly emptied. The man Chloe had beaten half to death had been dragged away long ago. Chloe was left alone, clutching the phone, collapsed on the floor. It felt as if an invisible hand was squeezing her heart, suffocating her. There was a time when she felt her heart was completely filled by him. A single smile from him could make her happy for an entire day. And he had been the same, his world revolving entirely around her. She had never imagined a day she would lose him. She remembered their wedding day, the day Julian had utterly humiliated her. She had stood there, waiting for him at the altar, only to have a friend deliver a message. He had already left the country. Chloe Anderson, a driver's daughter. Did you really think you were worthy of marrying me? Heartbroken, she had locked herself away, drinking day and night until she ended up in the hospital. And that was where she had first met Ethan. He had been like a ray of sunshine, bursting into her life and pulling her out of the darkness of her heartbreak. Later, under the moonlight, she had confessed her feelings to him. She said she was the moon, hidden in darkness, and he was her sun, the only thing that made her feel alive. He had laughed and called her cheesy, but his eyes had been red as he nodded and accepted her confession. She still remembered the words he had spoken as she held him tightly in her arms. Then you have to promise to always love me. If you stop loving me, I'll leave. And don't lie to me. I'll know everything. The sweet memories were now nothing but daggers to the heart. She stared out at the empty terrace, whispering to herself in a daze. Ethan, did you leave because I lied to you? I'm so sorry. Chloe felt as if she had slept for ages, but when she woke, she saw that only half an hour had passed. Her hands were covered in small cuts, the dried blood making them look grotesque. If he were still here, he would be chiding her for being so careless while tenderly bandaging her wounds. But Ethan was gone. Chloe wiped the tears from her face. Ethan was a brilliant son. He couldn't have been swallowed by the sea. As long as his body wasn't found, no one could declare him dead. Her expression was wild and unsettling. People were afraid to get too close. Within a few days, everyone else had left. Only one yacht remained. Only Chloe, a few of her most loyal staff, and the professional recovery team were left. From morning till night, Chloe did nothing but stare out at the endless expanse of the ocean. Sometimes she would talk to herself. Someone once got close enough to overhear a few words. Ethan, where are you? Please stop hiding. I know I was wrong. Ethan, please just let me see you. Or, what if I come down there to be with you? It was clear she was contemplating joining him. Her staff didn't dare to intervene directly, but they never left her side, terrified of what she might do. This continued for 2 full months. The recovery team was the first to give up. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. It's been 2 months. We can't in good conscience keep taking your money for this. He's not going to be found. Ms. Anderson, we're so sorry for your loss. Chloe was a shadow of her former self. No one would believe that this gaunt, disheveled woman with lifeless hair was the same glamorous, composed Chloe from 2 months ago. Her expression was one of utter defeat as she stared out at the churning waves. After a long silence, she finally spoke. 1 more month. Her voice was quiet, but her tone was firm and unwavering. The divers, seeing her state, didn't know what to say. They simply sighed and agreed. A month later, when the team approached her again, she spoke before they could. I know. We'll head back tomorrow. After 3 months at sea, the yacht finally returned to port. But Ethan would never be coming back. Chloe disembarked and rushed back to their house. On the yacht, she couldn't find any trace of him, and the salty air that had once been refreshing now just made her feel nauseous. The moment she got home, she went straight to the study. She remembered him saying he had put all their photos in the study. But when she entered the study, she froze. The photos weren't there. In a frantic daze, she searched room after room. It was only then that she realized how many things were missing from the house. Not just the photos. The love letters she had written him were gone. The art she had bought for him at auction, which he had so carefully arranged on the walls of the study, was also gone. Her eyes red with fury, Chloe gathered all the household staff. Who did this? She demanded, her voice ice. But beneath the anger, there was a tremor of fear in her voice. A terrible thought was forming in the back of her mind, a thought she didn't dare to entertain. The staff looked at each other, shaking their heads helplessly. Then, 2 of the housekeepers slowly raised their hands. Ma'am, one night, the master was burning things in the garden. It looked like. Chloe couldn't hear the rest of what they said. The last shred of hope in her heart died. She stumbled backward, barely able to stay on her feet. He had burned them. He had burned everything. Her hands trembled at her sides as a horrifying realization dawned on her. He had been planning to leave all along. When had it started? The tears came again, blurring her vision. Ethan, you lied to me, she wailed helplessly. I don't believe it. I will find you. The fog that had clouded her mind for months began to clear, and her memories came rushing back. She suddenly thought of someone, his friend, Mark. She remembered Mark's Facebook post about how he would miss him. When she had asked about it, Ethan had told her that Mark was the one moving abroad. Her mind raced. Was Mark really moving? Or was it Ethan who had been planning to leave all along? She beat her fists against her head, not daring to follow the thought to its conclusion. She fumbled for her phone and called Mark. He picked up after 2 rings. Mark, where are you? Mark sounded confused. I'm at home. What's wrong? Did something happen to Ethan? Her tongue felt thick in her mouth. She forced herself to sound calm. You didn't move abroad? Move abroad? Why would I do that? Wasn't Ethan the one who was supposed to be leaving? Before Mark could figure out what was going on, she hung up. Chloe stood there, clutching her phone, her eyes burning. He was planning to leave the country behind her back. Even Mark knew, but he had never said a word to her. The recording from his phone played on a loop in her mind. You still don't know that Chloe got rid of your baby, do you? For 3 months, she had been at sea, consumed with finding him. But now she was back in their home, and everything she had been avoiding for 3 months was laid bare before her, raw and undeniable. Yes, she had been pregnant. They had a child she had secretly gotten rid of. Julian knew. Only Ethan had been kept in the dark. Why had she done it? She asked herself again and again. She replayed every detail of her time with him, scrutinizing every memory. She didn't want to admit it, but there was only one possible truth. He had known about her and Julian all along. She loved Ethan. He was the sun that had pulled her from the darkness. She couldn't live without him. But Julian was the light she had chased her entire youth. The moment he reappeared, she had been drawn to him irresistibly. She thought she had hidden it so well, but apparently, she hadn't. When had he found out? With these thoughts racing through her mind, she reluctantly handed the phone to her assistant. Recover everything on this. She had to know everything Julian had done, everything he had orchestrated. After her assistant left, the house fell silent once more. The staff stood by silently, watching as she alternated between sobbing and manic laughter. They thought she had finally lost her mind. They kept their heads down, not daring to look at her or make a sound. Thankfully, it wasn't long before she went upstairs by herself. She locked herself in their bedroom, refusing to eat or drink. She curled up on the bed, breathing deeply, but she couldn't find even a trace of his scent. She bit her lip, cursing him for his cruelty, for leaving her with nothing. But then she would slap herself, hating her own foolishness for losing someone so good. She couldn't stop herself from replaying the last 6 years in her mind. 6 years was a long time. She couldn't imagine how she was supposed to go on living without him. Days turned into nights and nights into days. The next morning, her assistant arrived with the recovered phone, but she also brought another document with her. Ms. Anderson, there's something else. Seems you're pregnant again. Here are your test results. Chloe acted as if she hadn't heard, her attention focused solely on the phone. She opened the iMessage history between Ethan and Julian. It was filled with taunting messages from Julian. "I'm back in the country. Can you leave Chloe now? Chloe and I are in love. You just took advantage of her when she was vulnerable. Now that I'm back, can you stop clinging to her? Just back off. See? Even if you dropped dead right in front of her, she would only have eyes for me." Interspersed between the texts were numerous photos of them in a disheveled bed. Chloe scrolled through the messages, her eyes burning with a rage so intense it felt like they would burst. Julian. The veins on her temples throbbed as she spat out his name through gritted teeth, as if she were pronouncing a death sentence. Her assistant was terrified by the sight of her. "Ms. Anderson, please calm down. No matter what, you have to remember the kindness the Miller family showed you. Julian is their only son. You can't forget your history with them." At the mention of the Miller family, her expression seemed to soften slightly. But before her assistant could relax, Chloe spoke, her voice cold and deliberate. "Then my life can repay the Millers. As for the lives of Ethan and our child, Julian and his child will pay for those." A cold sweat broke out on the assistant's back. Was she actually planning a life for a life? The assistant was about to protest further when a frantic knocking came from the front door. "Chloe, it's me, Julian. Please open the door. Did you see? You're pregnant with my child." Hearing Julian's voice, the assistant ran for the door, terrified he would burst in and set Chloe off. But Chloe stopped her, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Let him in, Ms. Anderson." But while the assistant hesitated, the front door burst open. Julian stumbled inside. "Chloe, did you see? You're having my baby. The three of us can be a family, together forever, okay?" In the days after they returned from the yacht, Julian had been plagued by nightmares. Chloe had terrified him. He truly believed she was capable of killing him, but he had just escaped that hell abroad. His parents were gone. If he didn't hold on to Chloe, how would he survive? He had been lost, not knowing what to do. But then, things had changed. He found out she was pregnant again. Chloe had always been alone. The Millers had given her material comfort, but not a real family. Julian knew how much she craved a family. With this child, she would have to forgive him for everything he'd done. His plan was sound, but he had underestimated how much Ethan still meant to her. At his words, her face showed only disgust and revulsion, not a hint of hope. Julian couldn't believe she could be so cold. With tears in his eyes, he went to her side, reaching out a hand to gently touch her stomach, grabbing her other hand and pleading. "Chloe, I know I did wrong, but I never meant for any of this to happen. I just love you so much. I want to be with you. My parents would be so happy to see us together. Don't you think so, Chloe?" As she listened to his pathetic words, all she could hear were his taunts to Ethan. Chloe let out a cold laugh. She grabbed his chin, her eyes like ice, her grip tightening with each passing second. "Julian, you dare show your face here?" Terrified, Julian tried to push her away, but he was afraid of hurting the baby. After a few moments, he gave up, collapsing to the floor like a boneless heap, whimpering powerlessly. Tears of pain and fear streamed down his face, a few drops landing on her hand. She released him in disgust, leaving clear red fingerprints on his cheek. She looked at his pathetic, tear-streaked face, tore the lab report to shreds, and threw the pieces at him. "A child? I will only ever have a child with Ethan. As for this bastard in my stomach, someone, take me to the clinic. He wants a child? Then I'll have it delivered right now." Delivered now? How? It was barely an embryo. Julian knelt on the floor, his entire body shaking. She was going to get rid of their child. Julian panicked. He thought the baby would be his saving grace, the one thing that could win her back. Instead, it had only served to make her even more unhinged. As he watched the butler run to fetch the security guards, Julian finally broke down completely, screaming, "Chloe, why are you being so cruel to yourself just to get rid of my child? You love me. You chose me over Ethan again and again. Why are you doing this to me now? Just because he's dead? Are you going to play the grieving widow forever?" He screamed until he was hoarse, but Chloe didn't even spare him a glance. As the security guards entered, she gave a cold command. "Bring him with me." Julian began to scream and fight, trying to keep them away. But what could one slender man do against several large, muscular guards? In an instant, he was restrained and dragged out. "Chloe, you ungrateful bitch. You were the one who cheated, not me. You can't control yourself, so you take it out on everyone else. You just wait, Chloe. You'll get what's coming to you." As if finally seeing her for the ruthless person she was, he cursed her nonstop as they dragged him from the house. Fearing things would escalate, her assistant cautiously tried to reason with her. Chloe waved a weary hand. "It's just a simple procedure. I'll be fine. And compared to what Ethan went through, this is nothing. Her voice caught in her throat, and she couldn't continue. She had gotten rid of their first child with her own hands. After a long while, when she had composed herself, she gave her assistant an order. I want you to find out everything you can about Julian's time abroad. I want every detail. Yes, Ms. Anderson. The assistant left. After cleaning up the mess, the staff all retreated to the guest house. After she returned from the clinic, Chloe stayed alone in the vast, empty house, feeling utterly abandoned. Unable to bear the sober pain of her memories, she opened the liquor cabinet and began drinking straight from the bottle. Only when the alcohol took hold did the pain in her heart begin to dull. And so she remained, locked in the house, not eating, not drinking, just numbing herself with alcohol day after day. She lay on the floor in a stupor, never sure if she was drunk or asleep. In any case, she was rarely conscious. But she preferred it this way because sometimes, in her dreams, she would see him. In her dreams, he was still so gentle. She would be pregnant, her belly slightly rounded under a loose-fitting dress. He would be in the garden, trimming the roses, and he would smile at her. The setting sun would cast a golden glow on him, making him look as beautiful as a painting. She would watch him, completely captivated. He would walk over to her, a warm smile on his face, and tell her to take care of the baby. Overcome with emotion, she wouldn't know what to say, just smile foolishly. He would laugh at her silliness, and she wouldn't be angry, just hold him close, cherishing the moment. The dream was so beautiful that even in her drunken stupor, a smile would touch her lips. Then, filled with emotion, she would lean in to kiss him. But in the next second, her arms would be empty, and he would be gone. Ethan, she would reach out desperately, trying to catch him, but her hands would close on empty air. Her eyes would snap open to the empty house. There was no Ethan. In her rare moments of sobriety, the world seemed to lose all its color. It felt as if an invisible hand was squeezing her heart, stopping it from beating, stealing the air from her lungs. She would clutch her chest in agony, gasping for breath, as if calling his name was the only thing that could ease the pain. I'm so sorry. She truly knew she had been wrong. If she could go back in time, she would love only him with her whole heart. But it was too late. He had left without a word, without giving her a single chance to make things right. She couldn't imagine how she was supposed to live in a world without him. With a bitter smile, she shook her head, grabbed another bottle, and drank until she passed out. If she could only see him in her dreams, then she would dream forever. And so she drank for a very long time. When she finally woke up, she was in a hospital. When her butler saw she was awake, his eyes immediately welled with tears. Ma'am, you're finally awake. You've been unconscious for 7 days. Having been unconscious for so long, her mind was foggy. Where's my assistant? She asked. She was here this morning, but she had to go to the office. I'll call her now. The butler stepped out of the room to make the call. Chloe lay in the hospital bed, undergoing a series of tests. Severe alcohol poisoning, the doctor explained. There's significant damage to your liver and kidneys. You'll need to stay here for observation and rest. The doctor went over a list of instructions, and seeing that she seemed to be listening, he finally left. It wasn't long before her assistant arrived. Ms. Anderson, you're finally awake. Thank goodness. After giving her usual report on the company's affairs, the assistant added, You asked me to look into Julian's time abroad. I have the full report. Tell me. 6 years ago, Julian went to France to live with an artist named Anya. The two of them moved around between several countries after that, eventually settling in Sicily. This Anya was beautiful and charming, a con artist who swindled countless men and spent money like it was nothing. When her marks had nothing left to give, she would sell them into trafficking to make a profit. That's how she drained the Miller family fortune. Even the car accident that killed his parents happened while they were on their way to find him. Julian was so manipulated that he was still counting her money for her right up until the moment she sold him. He only realized what was happening at the very last second and managed to escape back to the States. After finishing her report, the assistant stood there, watching Chloe's unervingly calm expression, unsure of what to say. I understand. You can go now. After dismissing her, Chloe's lips twisted into a bitter, ugly smile. Chloe couldn't believe it. 6 years ago, Julian had claimed he was leaving to find his one true love, but all it took was a vile con artist to make him abandon her. And now, 6 years later, he had returned, professing his undying love for her, when in reality he was just escaping from one monster's clutches. From start to finish, she doubted even Julian himself knew how much of his love was real and how much was just an act. And what about her? 6 years ago, she had nearly died for that man. 6 years later, because of that same man, she had lost the true love of her life forever. Chloe, who had always been so ruthless and decisive in her career, felt like a fool for the first time in her life. A complete and utter idiot. She couldn't even understand why she had thrown herself at Julian the moment he returned, poisoning the pure love she shared with Ethan with countless lies and betrayals. Now, the child she'd had with Ethan was gone, and Ethan himself was gone. What reason did she have to keep living? The decision came in an instant. Staring out at the overcast sky, Chloe moved step by step toward the window. But the sight of the heavy bars on the window made her retreat with a bitter smile. "Ethan, why can't I come be with you? Are you still angry with me?" She knelt on the floor, lost in her own world, apologizing to him over and over. When the butler tried to help her up, she shoved him to the ground. "Leave me alone. Get out, all of you." The commotion brought a nurse running. Seeing Chloe's state, she called a doctor, who administered a sedative that finally calmed her down. 3 days later, Chloe was discharged. While the butler handled the discharge paperwork, her eyes were drawn to a man standing near the hospital entrance. "Ethan," she ran after him, heedless of everything else, closing the distance between them. She grabbed the man's arm. The feeling of living flesh beneath her fingertips sent a jolt through her, and her hands began to tremble uncontrollably. "Ethan," the man turned, a flicker of confusion in his eyes before he broke into a smile. "Have we met? Here, take this chocolate. It might make you feel a little better." Chloe stared at him, and in her daze, the stranger's face seemed to merge with Ethan's. For a moment, she couldn't tell them apart. Could it really be such a coincidence? The similar build, the same haircut, the same brand of chocolate, and here, in a hospital, the very place she had first met Ethan. Chloe's intuition told her there was more to this man's sudden appearance than met the eye. "I'm sorry, you just look so much like a friend of mine. Would you mind telling me your name?" She apologized, but her grip on his arm only tightened, making it clear she wouldn't let go until he answered. The man didn't seem to mind her rudeness. He just smiled and said, "I guess I just have one of those faces. My name is Leo. I hope I get to meet your friends sometime. Can I get your number, then?" In the weeks that followed, even without trying, Chloe kept running into Leo. Sometimes it was outside her office, sometimes in the parking garage, sometimes at her favorite restaurant. Leo's presence seemed to offer a brief respite from the pain of Ethan's absence. Their relationship progressed naturally, and before long, Leo had moved into Chloe's house. Seeing Chloe's condition improve, everyone in the household began to relax. But somehow, word of this reached Julian. One morning, a disheveled and frantic Julian showed up at the house to confront her. "Chloe, you're a fickle, heartless bitch. You acted like you were going to die when Ethan was gone, and you blamed it all on me. But look at you now. You've already found another man and moved him right into your house. Don't even try to deny it. Even without me, you would have just fallen for someone else. You got rid of my child. You're a murderer. Chloe, you're a monster. A complete monster." Ever since Chloe had gotten rid of the baby, Julian had fallen into a downward spiral. Chloe had blocked his number and all his social media, and every time he tried to come to the house, the security guards would find him and throw him out. Having finally made it inside today, he was determined to unleash all his pent-up frustration. The more he yelled, the more agitated he became. Staring at Chloe's cold, emotionless face, he snapped, pulling a fruit knife from behind his back and lunging at her. "Look out!" The cold steel of the blade was just inches from Chloe's chest. Leo's face went white with fear. In a split second, he threw himself in front of Chloe, taking the blow for her. Julian stared, his eyes wide with disbelief, at the man he had just stabbed. After a long moment, he dropped the knife with a trembling hand and fled. Leo had taken the full force of the blow. Blood poured from the wound in his back, and all the color drained from his face. But a faint, secret smile touched the corner of his lips, because he had finally heard the system's alert. System alert, target's current darkening value is 80%. After Ethan's departure, this world had become unstable again. Leo was the next agent sent to stabilize it. But his smile lasted less than 2 seconds before the system's alerts began to chime again, one after another. System alert, target's current darkening value is 90%. System alert, target's current darkening value is 40%. System alert, target's current affection level is 20%. System alert, target's current affection level is 80%. The data was fluctuating wildly, with no discernible pattern. Warning, warning, system error, system error. After a few short electronic beeps, Leo found he could no longer contact the system. He looked at Chloe in confusion, only to see a desolate coldness radiating from her. She stared directly at him, her lips moving to form words that chilled him to the bone. "Leo, you're not from this world." It wasn't a question. Her tone was so certain that it terrified Leo, and he scrambled backward. But Chloe advanced on him, her cold hands closing around his throat. The power of this world's protagonist was not to be underestimated. With the slightest pressure, she could end his life. Where is Ethan? Chloe had never truly believed that Ethan would kill himself. During her time at sea, she had been in denial, unable to accept it. But since her return, every new piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. His departure had been planned. Even the jump itself was just one part of his plan. Julian had probably just been an unforeseen complication in his plan to leave. On his phone's calendar, she had found an entry for that day. It was just 2 words, exit world. Staring at those words, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. It wasn't until Leo's mysterious appearance that all the scattered pieces finally clicked into place. Tell me everything you know, if you want to live. Her grip tightened. Leo choked, unable to breathe, tears and snot streaming down his face as his eyes bulged. I'll talk. Let me go. Chloe released him. Leo's legs gave out and he collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. He couldn't contact the system, and Chloe was clearly unhinged. His own survival was all that mattered now. Leo spilled everything like beans from a jar, telling her all about the system and the missions. Ethan isn't from this world. This is a simulation, a mission world. You're the protagonist and he was your assigned agent. Once his mission was complete, he returned to his own world. Leo's words left Chloe utterly stunned. It was only now that she finally understood what he had said all those years ago, when she had first confessed her love to him. Then you have to promise to always love me. If you stop loving me, I'll leave. And don't lie to me. I'll know everything. At the time, she had naively thought he was just being sweet, asking for a promise of eternal love. But it had been a warning. He was an agent with the help of the system. If he had wanted to, he could have known everything about her. All those lies she had told to be with Julian, clumsy or clever, had been completely transparent to him. It didn't matter whether Julian had taunted him or not. The moment her affection had wavered, Ethan had known everything. Chloe finally understood the whole truth, but the weight of it was crushing. It was all her own doing. She had no one to blame but herself. But he was alive. That meant she still had a chance. How can I get to him? Chloe was desperate, but Leo just shook his head, cowering. I don't know. What about this system you mentioned? I can't contact it anymore. Chloe swore under her breath, her eyes narrowing. And why not? I think it was the data fluctuations. It caused the system to crash. Chloe let out a soft, humorless laugh. Now she knew how to control this so-called system. When it's back online, she said, her voice low and dangerous, tell it to send me to Ethan. Leo kept his head down, not daring to reply. Chloe didn't seem to care. Or, she continued casually, we can just let the system keep crashing until this whole world collapses and we all die together. That would be fine too. I haven't wanted to live for a long time anyway. Her voice was quiet, but her tone was absolute. Leo didn't doubt her for a second. He could see it in her eyes. She would really bring this entire world down with her. She was insane. A few days later, the system came back online. Leo immediately relayed Chloe's message to the system, adding his own panicked embellishments. She's a lunatic. She knows about you. If you don't do what she says, she'll destroy this whole world. We'll all die, and you'll be destroyed along with it. The system had never encountered a situation like this. It immediately escalated the report up its chain of command. After several more days of waiting, the system finally responded. But this time, the assigned agent was no longer Leo. It was Chloe. Chloe had made a deal with the system. She would now become an agent. If she could complete 99 missions, she would be free to choose any world to live in. A choice that included, of course, Ethan's world. Before finalizing the contract, the system warned her, the 99 missions vary in difficulty. Completing them all could take decades, maybe longer. Are you certain you want to do this? Chloe didn't hesitate for a second. I'm certain. The agony of the past few months was finally replaced by purpose. Fate had given her a chance, and no matter the cost, she would not let it slip away. This was her only chance to see him again. After she agreed, a blinding white light filled her vision. When she opened her eyes again, she was in a completely new world. After receiving her first mission briefing, Chloe immediately got to work. In less than 3 years, she had already completed 40 missions. She worked relentlessly, barely sleeping. Sometimes, even the system would advise her to rest. But she didn't dare. What if, back in his own world, Ethan fell in love with someone else? She couldn't bear the thought. All she wanted was to get to him faster. Even 1 second sooner would be worth any price. But time in his world didn't stop for her. In his 7th year back in his own world, Ethan got married. His bride was tall, with a gentle face and an artistic soul. The way she looked at him was always full of tender affection. Chloe wasn't surprised that he would fall for a woman with eyes like that. In fact, Chloe could see everything happening in his world. It was a small privilege the system had granted her, perhaps out of pity. 2 years earlier, he had been teaching in a remote town out west, while she was there on a photography trip. A landslide blocked the only road out of the mountains, and that's how they met. After that, her camera, which had once only captured landscapes, was suddenly filled with images of a gentle man. Sometimes he was smiling, sometimes frowning, sometimes looking at the lens with mock anger. No matter the expression, he was always so alive in her photos. Chloe traced his image on the screen with her finger, tears falling as she watched. She had taken photos of him, too. They'd had so many pictures together, but he had burned them all. She couldn't blame him for his cruelty. She could only blame herself for not cherishing what they had. He had his own dreams, his own ambitions. He wasn't the kind of person to sit still. Yet for her, he had stayed in that strange world, willingly trapping himself in a gilded cage. She had been wrong about so much more than just that one thing, she thought. On the day of his wedding, Chloe had the system send a bouquet of simple, ordinary flowers. A small sign that she had been there, in a way. After he was married, the system had asked her if she wanted to end her contract early. Ethan is married now. Based on your efficiency, you've already completed more than enough missions. If you wish to stop, I can request to have you sent back to your original world. But Chloe had just shaken her head. I'm not going to any world that doesn't have Ethan in it. Finally, in her 10th year as an agent, Chloe completed her 99th mission and was granted passage to his world. She put on the white custom dress he had once given her, styled her hair perfectly, and applied her makeup with precision. She stood before the mirror, carefully plucking the few gray hairs that had appeared at her temples. Only when she was certain everything was perfect did she follow the system's directions to a large amusement park. The system said he would be there. 10 years had passed. The sharp, intimidating aura she once possessed had softened, replaced by a gentle grace. She drew many glances as she walked, but her eyes were only searching for him. The park was huge. After walking for nearly an hour, her eyes suddenly lit up. Ethan, she walked toward him in a daze, but as the scene came into focus, she stopped, frozen in place. There, at the carousel, was Ethan, holding a little girl in his arms, sitting on a white horse. The little girl's laughter carried on the air as she called out to the woman holding a camera nearby. "Mommy, I kissed Daddy. Hee." The woman with the camera feigned annoyance. "No kissing Daddy. Daddy is mine." He laughed, a deep, happy sound, looking from his daughter to his wife with pure adoration. Chloe stepped back, hiding in the shadows, feeling like a stalker as she watched their perfect happiness. The word honey, which she had longed to say for a decade, remained unspoken. She and Ethan could have had a child, too. But it had been so small, she never even knew if it was a boy or a girl. If it had been a girl, she would have bought her the prettiest dresses. If only she were the one holding that camera. But that was a hope she could never realize. Chloe lowered her head, defeated, and let the pain wash over her. But when she looked up again, he was gone. She frantically scanned the crowd for him, but when she turned, a woman was standing in her way. "Excuse me, miss, do you know my husband?" You were staring at him. For a fleeting moment, Chloe felt the urge to say, "He's my husband. We never got divorced." But she quickly suppressed the impulse. She just shook her head and said calmly, "I'm sorry, you just reminded me of my own daughter. She lives abroad and I don't get to see her often." The woman's expression softened with sympathy. Chloe didn't mind and even asked her to take an ice cream to the little girl. The little girl's eyes lit up at the sight of the ice cream. After her mother whispered something to her, she turned and waved enthusiastically in Chloe's direction. "Thank you, ma'am. Goodbye." He glanced over too, but all he saw was the back of a woman walking away, looking lonely. Not daring to disturb his new life any further, Chloe turned and walked away. She reminded herself, again and again, that her wish had been granted. She was in the same world as him. She could see that he was happy. Wasn't that enough? Even if she wasn't the one to have him, to make him happy, she would be content. She walked for a long time, her head bowed, before she allowed herself one last, reluctant look back. The park was bustling with people. He was long gone. A sad, pained smile touched Chloe's lips. "I hope you can be happy like this, forever. Goodbye, my love."